especially appreciate the public turning out on a cold night. I'm not sure what was going on. I was coming down, I was in that right-hand lane down Market Street, and I had to get in the other lane. Everybody turning right. I'm not sure what's going on, but I do appreciate it. I do have a few comments that I'd like to make, and I was laughing because normally there's a podium in here, so I'll just work off my notes. I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of go back over the course of this year, since this is December and it's our last meeting of this particular year, and maybe review some things. I think sometimes in the throes of all the work we've got to do, and especially in such a difficult area as animal services, I think sometimes we need to reflect back on what the real accomplishments have been, and also acknowledge the fact there's an incredible amount of additional work to do. In fact, I would say that this work will never be done. What we hope we can do is do less of it and do what we do have to do better. And so I thought it'd be a good idea to go back through just some of the things that have happened this year as a reflection on the year. And I've got a couple of other comments to add as well. I guess in terms of showing the commitment of the county to animal services, the approval of the new shelter has to be at the top of the list of accomplishments. Through the support of our commissioners, the commitment of the dollars for that project, and something that we'll see early in 20, I think. It'll be a state-of-the-art facility to do something that we really wish we didn't have to do, but we will have the best way to do that. And hopefully, in doing so, we'll also be able to create an educational environment that will help minimize the need for the shelter. And in doing so, we'll be able to help our community. And as you know, one of the things about that is being done, it will actually have facilities where if a community wanted to meet there, they'd be able to use one of the conference rooms. So I think all that's going to be, we should look at that as a community resource, not just a shelter. Another thing that we were able to do through Bev Levine's leadership, there's still a lot more work to do, that's the whole community cat issue. And while it's clear that is very complex, given the state of the regulations in North Carolina, health department concerns, and honestly, just being able to focus the resources of volunteers, because there's a lot of very committed people to it, but they also have full-time jobs. And that's partly true of all of the different things that we do, as all of those of you who are active in volunteer organizations know. We've added both a rescue coordinator and a behaviorist to staff, which I personally think is a great move. Particularly, both are important to work with our rescue organizations. The other one that's also important is a behaviorist, having a behaviorist in the shelter. And I'm sure that the contribution that person makes is only going to increase as we figure out how to integrate that into the overall process. A little bit later, Jorge's going to be talking about one of the processes they use there, and I think that'll become more apparent. The work on the use of development of the hotspots, where we're spending our time in terms of animal control, where most of the calls are coming from, and how we can start to address that through a community effort, is extremely important. And we should have, certainly early in the first quarter of next year, a plan on how that's going to work. And that's a commitment that Jorge's made to us, that we will in fact have that, and I think that's going to make a huge difference, where we focus in on the right places. The animal population problem is only going to be addressed through community support and working in the community. You're not going to legislate that. People have to want to do the right things by way of their animals, and the way you do that is you get out in the community. It's a little bit like community policing, where the officers are actually in the community, they build relationships, they know people. The same thing is going to happen here if we're going to shrink those hot spots. And that'll be one of our metrics. Do we in fact reduce the calls in those hotspot areas or not? If we don't reduce the calls, we're going to say, well, this really didn't work. What are we going to do different? But if we do see some, over the course of this next year, some reduction in that, which more than some, and I think there will be a substantial reduction, then we're going to be in good shape. Another thing that's happened over the course of this year is not only working with the local rescues, but work with other organizations where we can move animals that they're adoptable, but for various reasons, like demand for adoptable dogs in Guilford County, to other jurisdictions and other areas where they can find forever homes. that's substantially helped us in a number of ways. We'll hear more about that a little bit tonight when we look at the numbers. Improve the overall shelter metrics, but also room to improve. You know, when we talk about declining numbers, no one believes that saying, well, euthanasia declined is something we want to go out and brag about. But the fact of the matter is we had substantial improvement. Our intake is actually lower year to date, and our euthanasia numbers are substantially lower. And you'll see a little bit of that later. And the part of that's because of these other things that you do, like building relationships on a dog. I think it's a safe statement to say that knowingly adoptable dog is euthanized at this stage. Would you not agree? That's
No,
99% accurate.
Yeah, no.
99%. Knowing being the key. But the fact of the matter is, we do need other places to have these dogs adopted, and through Jorge's relationships with other people across the country, we've been able to do a lot in that area, and that's actually helped us. Because there's, as many of you all know, there are actually areas of this country where there aren't enough companion animals to meet the needs of families. As odd as that may seem when you sit, particularly in the southeast, the fact of the matter is in the northeast there's a shortage of adoptable dogs. And I think the final thing that I'd say is the fact we hired Jorge. Probably the first time in a number of years we've had a true professional running our shelter. You may not agree with every decision that's been made, you may not agree with the speed with which we've been able to do things, but it'd be very hard to argue that the county didn't do an outstanding job in making this hire. Our goal now is to continue to get behind the shelter leadership as he continues to work through, as his team learns what his expectations are and so forth. But as we told him, Linda and I met with him a couple of weeks ago, as we do every month, we also told him the honeymoon was over. He's been here a year. So you can't play that card anymore. You've got to get out and do that. And then the final thing that I'd like to say is just something about our committee itself, and this includes Carl. Next year, I hope all of us will make a commitment to try to spend at least a couple of hours a month in the shelter to get a real feel. It's one thing we have some very active volunteers here, and we have some others of us that aren't as engaged. And I'm not talking going out and trying to tell them how to run the place. What I'm really talking about is just being aware of the things these folks have to deal with. And that'll give us a better feel. And let me go back and mention one other thing that almost seems, as you all know, we moved away from Pet Point to Chameleon under a different leader. Some of the criticism that the shelter gets is because of that move, even though you may not recognize it. It's because of its lack of interfaces into some of these Pet Finder type sites. One of the things that Pet Point, and we're in the throes, I don't know if that contract has been finally negotiated or not, Jorge, you can speak to that. But the fact is, once that's in place, that puts that all back on track the way it ought to be. It's also going to allow us to pull forward a lot of the statistics that are absolutely essential. So that's all I wanted to add. I thought it was appropriate to give us kind of a recap of the things I see. I'm sure there are other things that I failed to mention, maybe just as significant. I know one is some land that Brenda's group bought, which we don't have anything to do with, but is a substantial thing on their part and shows what a group of committed and dedicated volunteers are able to do. Okay, the minutes were distributed. Is there any changes or additions to those? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes published?
Can I just add one correction?
Sure.
It's just a spelling thing, but, where it says Maddie's Fund Grant under Roman numeral 3, Part B, it's it's MADD instead of TT.
Did that change with any other changes or additions? Okay, hearing none. Have a motion to approve the minutes. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion stand approved. Is there anything to add in the community cat side at this point? I know that we remember your email that you sent, but is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, if I may.
Sure.
And actually, we have another subcommittee under there that, I'd also like to take a couple minutes and talk about too, but I'll do the community cats one first. So, at the last meeting, we mentioned that, Dr. Sheets, at our last community meeting, had mentioned the possibility of moving ahead with some kind of massive spay day. She is indeed going ahead with something. It's a little bit smaller scale because she has planned it relatively quickly. But this coming weekend, Saturday and Sunday, she and Planned Parenthood Clinic will be holding like a special weekend for cats in traps. She has limited the people who are able to come to those who are bringing a lot of cats. So you have to be bringing at least 10 or 15 cats to be able to participate in this. Apparently she's pretty filled up with people, mostly from Davidson County. There's an active group of trappers down there working on some huge colonies that can easily get 10, 15 cats. So, I mean, that's great. I mean, you know, they're doing a lot of cats. There's gonna be cats that otherwise would have had a hard time getting done. So it is happening. Our hope will be in our community that next year, potentially, given what they, you know, learn from what works well here, can it be bigger? Can it involve more vets? We have a little bit more time to plan. And can we open it up to, you know, more people in the urban area here in Greensboro who may only bring in one or two or something like that. So we'll see how that goes this weekend.
Super.
That
That's good.
weekend.
Do you know if the Davidson Animal Shelter is playing a role in that?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay.
But the people that are active in the feral community in Davidson, you know, work with the folks at the shelter, but I don't think the shelter is playing a role in this in any way. And Davidson, I guess, doesn't have quite the availability of clinics that we do in Greensboro, so it also helps them to be able to come and get them done in a weekend like that. So anyway, I can report back in January to how that went and how many cats they did, and you know, how we can maybe move forward with something a little bit bigger next year. So the other subcommittee update. So I think up till now we've kind of been calling Pet Retention Resources Subcommittee, which is a little bit awkward language. And also since Jorge was talking about like kind of the Gate City initiative, and I just thought pet retention could have like a technical meaning and some other initiatives. So we just changed the name of that subcommittee to be the Pet Responsibility Subcommittee because it directly aligns with Ruby's program. And Ruby is here. Clarissa Norden is here in the front row. She is a vet who is also working with us. Is Libby here?
She's on her way.
Okay, and Allison Dunmore, a regular dog volunteer, is part of our committee, and we have been meeting regularly to develop educational materials to be available at the shelter. So we have the literature rack is up now. It's got different things stuck in, and what's interesting is I need to work out with Jorge and Daryl a way to keep the paper flow up, because many things I've stuck in are already gone. So people are taking the information sheets. They range from the very specific, like how to crate train your dog, what kind of vet care does your cat need in the first few years after adopting, to some very general resources. And one of them I wanted to show tonight, Clarissa made some copies and she's done the bulk of work on this. But this is something that we just thought would be very useful. This is an updated version of what I shared last time, so I'll just pass around and everyone can take one. This is something that we want to make available to people, and also to shelter staff down in intake to hand out to people who come in, say, surrendering litters, or maybe want to see if they can figure out a way to keep their animal, even though it's a financial burden, like we put on financial assistance here. So this could be a resource for people to take freely, but also to be given by shelter staff. This lists organizations in the triad that do low-cost spay-neuter, low-cost vet care, wellness, where they can get additional financial help if they have a sick animal, if they need additional financial help over low-cost spay-neuter clinic prices. Because, you know, I mean, the idea of the community outreach makes sense, but it's also the reality that a lot of times the community is showing up on our front door. Like, they're coming to us. So if we can reach out to them when they're at our location, that just makes sense. So this is just a part of that cause I know the folks at the front desk, and they are often so busy that just to have something concise in one sheet might be